Now we will look into the British government's industrial policy. In 1850s, our Indian cloth mills also started in India. Earlier, there were no cloth mills in India before to 1850. By 1850, in India too, cloth mills were set up. The first cloth mill was set up at Mumbai, then at Ahmedabad. These are the textile industries started in India by 1850. So here cloth producing on the machines also started in India. Earlier cloths producing on machines were at England. So here in India too, industries used machines for producing the cloth. So when cloth mills started at Mumbai and Ahmedabad, there the educated people and some factory owners they demanded some special tax should be levied. Some special tax should be imposed on the cloth coming from Britain. At that time, machines producing cloth at England was exported to India. So here in India too, cloth production started using the machines. So to protect Indian cloth mills and encourage the Indian cloth mills, they wanted a special tax should be levied on cloth being made in England. Okay, so that Indian cloth should get a good market. This is a special tax British government levied on Indian cloth coming from India to British. Understand? The same thing educated people and industrial owners, factory owners demanded the same tax should be levied on British cloth, that is, the cloth made at England in machines, so that there could be protection to the Indian factories. And this special tax would help in what you call developing what you call Indian factories, and it also encourages the sale of Indian cloth. Understand? So what we see here, they levied a special tax on Indian weavers when India was exporting cloth to the British, so that same kind of special tax these factory owners and educated people in India also demanded, whereas the British government refused this special tax to collect a tax from the what to call a British cloth, which is uh, coming to the what Indian market. Okay, British government refused to accept the demand of the Indian textile workers, Indian textile owners. So why did British refuse this? Because there was a great pressure on British government from British factory owners and traders. So the government decided not to go against the interests of the British factory owners. Understand? But we see this continued up to 1896. In 1896, the income of British government from India declined, very much declined. But at any cost, British government want income. So the government started thinking that in what ways it can go for increasing the income. So in that difficult time, that is in 1896, the income to the British government from the Indian merchants, from Indian factories reduced. So they wanted to get much more income from the Indians. So there the British government decided to impose a tax of 3.5%. How much? 3.5% tax on cloth coming from the Britain to India. Understand? Here, British government collected 3.5 tax on Indian cloth, which is exported to the Britain. At the same time, it also collected a tax of 3.5 percentage on what you call cloth coming from Britain to India. Understand? So the government levied a 3.5 percentage tax on cloth coming from Britain to India, and they don't want to harm the sale of the Britain cloth. Understand? Here, cloth, Britain cloth coming to India, on that tax levied. Okay, and they wanted to see the protection to the Britain cloth, so that same rate of tax, that is 3.5 percentage of tax, also levied on Indian cloth. Understand? Which is exported to the Britain also. Understand? So this is the tax which become a conflict between what you call Indian people, Indian factory owners, and British government. Okay, this tax become very important cause for long struggle between the Indian people and British government. Indians have understood that the British government is protecting only the interest of the British factories. That means it is showing a partiality, a discrimination. It is the government of British and gives protection to the British factory owners. We are colonial people, right? Indian factory owners are belonging to India, right? These are the people living in India, right? How could British take steps to protect Indian factory owners? Because the goal of the British government to encourage the factory owners of Britain and to discourage and suppress the what the Indian factory owners. Understand? So the Indian people, Indian factory owners, educated Indians, they have understood that British government is protecting the interest of British factories. Okay, and Indian people opposed this kind of attitude. Okay, and they demanded that the tax should be removed. Okay, though the British government protecting to the British factory owners, though we have lot of troubles, our Indian factory owners produced cloth, thread, understand? There the factories producing cloth, thread, then sugar, jute, paper, matches, cement. These were set up in India. Understand? There were many problems for Indian factories. There was no encouragement to the Indian factory owners. There was no financial resources to set up factories in India by Indians. So Indian people in this difficult time, they come forward and set up industries relating to producing cloth, thread, sugar, that is sugar industries, jute industries, paper industry, matches industry producing matchboxes, and cement industry. These were set up in India with what to call law with great efforts in the critical time where there was no encouragement from British government. And these all the factories set up in India by Indian factory owners started developing after 1914. Before 1914, these were set up, but there was no progress. Understand? After 1914, there was a rapid development of Indian factories. So, what is the reason for development of Indian factories after 1914? You know very well. In 1914, a major war occurred, that is World War One. World War One began in 1914. When World War One began in 1914, there we see that Britishers were engaged in a World War One. During World War One time, our Indian industries developed very rapidly. Instead, it is from 1914 to 1918 is the period of World War One. During this period, imports of foreign goods, import of foreign cloth to India reduced. So here we see that many of the cargo ships, what do you mean by cargo ships? Ships supplying products from Britain to Indian market, they reduced because all the cargo ships which were used for exporting cloth to India diverted to the war related issues. So all these cargo ships they used to supply war material to get success in the World War One. So when ships were turned to supplying the war material to war site, there the supply of what to call cloth and other material to the Indian region has reduced. So there was shortage of ships to India. This is the main reason. What is the main reason? The reason is that there was a shortage of goods to the Indian market due to the shortage of cargo ships. Second is that factories in Europe, throughout Europe continent, the factories which were producing different materials, different products, they started producing war related material. That means arms, guns, bombs, they started producing in the factories which were used earlier to produce the cloth. Understand? So very few goods were produced. Understand? So there were very less goods for Indian market. So at that time there was a shortage of goods in India. So to meet the needs of the Indian market, our Indian textiles developed rapidly. This is the reason. Understand? After 1914, we see there is a rapid development of our Indian industries. Understand? So the Indian factory owners they produced on a large scale and sold the goods in Indian market. With that, they earned much more profit. Understand? There, the large quantity of goods produced by Indian factories in India helped to meet the needs of the Indian people. At the same time, the profit earned by Indian factory owners, that profit Indian factory owners used to purchase machines from Europe. The money they received from the selling of their goods, Indian factory owners what to call purchased what to call machines from Europe and set up new industries in India running with machines. It means machine made production also started in India. So at this time, Indian industrialists, Indian industrialists, they began what to call demanding that British government should leave tax on foreign goods. What do you mean by foreign goods? Goods coming from other countries to India. Understand? When a tax is imposed on foreign goods, that encourages the sale of the Indian goods because Indian factory owners wanted that their industries should survive. Okay, because we are Indians, we set up our own industries should survive, right? So it is very essential to protect the Indian industries in India, right? But the British government did not accept this one. British government wanted to see the protection of the British industries. Understand? So the government accepted finally the demand of the Indian traders, Indian factory owners due to many reasons. What do you mean by many reasons? One is World War ended by 1918. Okay, after the end of the 1918 World War, after the end of the World War One in 1918, British government started producing the goods in British factories, and those industries were not enough to meet the requirement. Moreover, the Britain incurred heavy losses due to the World War One, so it was not able to produce much more goods to meet the requirement of the what people. So the government had accepted to the demand of the Indian factory owners to impose a tax on the foreign goods. So after 1917, a tax was levied on many foreign goods. Understand? This is one important what to call point the British government have come forward changing. So after 1917, tax was levied on many of the foreign goods one after another. So with this, we see what was the result. Factories set up in India. Factories which were set up in India, they developed very fast. Understand? That is the reason why does the Indian industries developed rapidly after 1914. Okay, this is a reason we what to call see we have seen here. And okay, and here we looked at how were the problems of the Indian industries at the time of independence. After long struggle for freedom, uh, Indian industries have got a very little help from the British government. Very little help. What that in 1917 tax was levied. That means tax was imposed on many of the foreign goods, one after another one. This is a small help from the British government. In fact, we need much more help from the British. Understand? Still, we find their factories, very large number of factories were in the hands of the what Britishers. Understand? Here we see that many of the factories, banks, ships which export and import factory produced items from Britain to India, India to Britain. All these were under the control of Europeans. So banks also under the control of Europeans. So Europeans had many advantages from these companies, right? Europeans are English people, and the banks, factories, ships which were under the control of the people are also English people. Those are Europeans. So Europeans helped to the European people only. Understand? Whereas they, whereas our Indian factory owners found it difficult to access to the banks and ships which were under the control of Europeans. Instead, Europeans had many advantages. They were able to access easily to contact officers, authorities of the British government because all these factories, banks, ships under the control of Europeans only. Understand? So here we see that funds were easily given to the foreign people. That means foreign trade was also in the hands of the Europeans. What do you mean by foreign trade? A trade from one country to another country. Here there was a trade from India to Europe, especially England. Understand? This also controlled by the Europeans. Okay, so that there was no shortage of funds to the British factory owners and to the British factory owners while exporting their goods using the ships, and also banks which given loans to the British factory owners. So Indian factory owners suffered a lot. Understand? So even though there the Europeans had much influence on the industries relating to the Britishers, Indian industrialists also developed a challenge to meet the situation. So here one important point we have to discuss here that Indian industrialists were able to control textile industries. Cotton textile industries were in India, right? The great achievement by Indian industrialists in this critical situation was that establishment of cotton textile industries in India. Understand? Especially we see that Jamshedji Tata, Jamshedji Tata set up a steel factory at Jamshedpur. Understand? That what we call TISCO, Tata Iron and Steel Company. So this was the what to call a company set by Jamshedji Tata, a steel factory at Jamshedpur. Okay, so this is the progress in critical situation we have achieved. A tax on foreign goods also helped the Indian industrialist from the British government, but that was not sufficient. Though the British government accepted to collect a tax on foreign goods, it is a little help. Okay, many resources are needed for the development of Indian industries. What are those? Railways. Understand? Railways are needed. Roadways, electricity, coal, iron, all these are needed for development of the Indian industries. So in this what to call areas, Britishers have not paid any attention. They have not focused on it.